we are live, ladies and gentlemen. As the dust settles in the aftermath of the election, President-elect Donald Trump is staying busy constructing his cabinet. We've got Elon Musk, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., Tulsi Gabbard, Marco Rubio, Linda McMahon, and many others that are going to be playing major roles in the incoming administration. Is Trump putting together a dream team, or are there some less than good picks that are going to spoil the whole bunch? We're going to be talking about that. And also, Thanksgiving is next week. Are you expecting a holiday filled with good cheer? Or are you like me and have family threatening to boycott Thanksgiving if anyone dares bring up Trump and politics? We're going to be talking about all this and more on episode 474 of the In the Tank podcast.
How do you like my garbage truck? This truck is in honor of Kamala and Joe Biden.
That's right. It was a surprise intro, Jim. In fact, it was a surprise to me. I went to go click on one of the buttons and I just made an impulsive decision. So.
Yeah, I forgot to do a little extra little cookie there at the end of the intro for this week because there's a lot of fun, but I was hoping you would pick that one. That's one I was going to recommend anyway. So
perfect. Well, welcome to the In the Tank podcast. As always, I'm your host, Donald Kendal. Joining me, just revealed already, we got Jim Lakely, VP of the Heartland Institute. Jim, how are you feeling this good day?
I am feeling so great. I mean, there's a song in my heart that will just not be silenced. There's a spring in my step that will just not stop springing. And I heard today that Rob Reiner, Meathead himself, has checked himself into a facility to recapture some sort of sense of peace and calmness after the election. So that's
serious.
Yeah, I'm serious. It was I saw that today. It was on X. So a lot of people are taking this election very well. A lot of people are not taking this election very well. But if you're an American patriot, you are like me. You have a song in your heart and a spring in your step, and this is going to be a fantastic Thanksgiving.
Nobody can take the joy from us. We will talk about Thanksgiving later in the show. I have got a story for you all. Also joining us, we have Chris Talgo, editorial director here at the Heartland Institute. Chris, do you have a song in your heart?
No, Donnie, I've got a black heart, and you know what? It's snowing, and there's only one kind of snow I like. It's not the kind that falls from the sky. So, I'm just dealing with it.
What does that mean?
It means whatever you want it to mean.
Okay, all right. Let your imaginations run wild on that one.
That's right.
Ladies and gentlemen, we've got a lot to talk about. As you can see in the sidebar there, we'll talk about the pro-family legislative conference that me and Chris and Jack and Justin were at. We're going to touch on that theme of last week's episode. Everything has changed because I've got a couple of things to say about that. We're going to spend the bulk of the episode talking about Trump's cabinet picks. And then, like I said, we've got some Thanksgiving talk, considering that Thanksgiving is next week, and we most likely will not have a show next week. But before we get into those topics, I have to put that message out there that I put at the beginning of all of these episodes, which is a call to action, specifically for those, first, I guess, that are listening to the audio-only version of this podcast, probably catching it on a Friday or later. Leave a review for us on iTunes. That would be greatly appreciated. And consider joining us a day earlier where we are live streaming this on Thursdays at noon Central Time on Facebook and YouTube and Rumble and X. And you can join the conversation, throw your comments and questions in the chat. Maybe we'll show your comments on the screen. Maybe we'll address your questions on the fly. You cannot support the show financially using super chats because YouTube has demonetized us, but you can go to heartland.org/inthetank and donate to the show that way. It would directly help out the show, and YouTube doesn't get to take a 30% cut, so that is fantastic. And you could also help out the show by hitting that like button, sharing this content, subscribing if you haven't already, or just leaving a comment under the video. All those things help break through those big tech algorithms that prevent content like this from being shown to more people. All right, let's get to it. So first off, let's explain where we were last week. Chris, we abandoned the show. It was taken over by Jim Lakely, who brought in Linnea Lucan and Chris Martz. Is that how you pronounce his last name?
Yes.
They did a good job. They did their best, trying to bring you all a good show. Hopefully you all enjoyed that. Chris and Justin, Jack, and I spent the end of last week and the weekend in Dallas attending the Pro-Family Legislative Conference that's put on by the Pro-Family Legislative Network. The conference is designed to educate state lawmakers on a whole host of important issues. We were there to assist in the educating side of the equation. Justin and Jack participated in, I think, 4 separate presentations informing legislators about a few topics that, if you listen to the show consistently, you'll probably have heard us talk about, specifically the European Union ESG scheme that's designed to impact businesses across the world, including here in the United States, and the Uniform Commercial Code and the implications that it has with some of its specific articles that would have impacts on property rights. And I'm happy to report that the legislators were very interested in what our delegation had to say, taking these threats to American liberty very seriously. After some of the things that I heard from a number of lawmakers, I have increased optimism when it comes to combating these emerging issues. So great things going on at that conference. Overall, it was fantastic. It was informative. It was enlightening. And it gave us an opportunity to talk to a number of legislators who really serve on the front lines when it comes to pushing back against some of these most important issues facing our country here. So, Chris, any thoughts on the conference? Did you enjoy yourself?
Yeah, I did actually. It was nice to be in Dallas and some nice warm weather. So like you said, it was interesting to interact with all these lawmakers to just get their opinion on some of the the big issues that are going to be coming up in the 2025 legislative session. Most of these were state lawmakers, so it was more focused on some of these state-based reforms that they're trying to push through. Not so much at the federal level, but Glenn Beck was there. It's my first time ever meeting him in person. That was great. I think he gave a great speech. He was very optimistic. So I think the whole atmosphere there was, extremely optimistic. I think you mentioned this, Donnie, they were a very wholesome bunch of people. So
yes.
I feel like I fit right in, actually.
That's right. Yes. Yeah, you fit right in. There was many great presentations, but the highlight of the conference had to have been Glenn Beck. He took the stage in the second day, I think.
Yeah.
And he explained how usually he's the one bringing the doom and gloom to the attention of the public and lawmakers. And the years past where Justin and I have been in attendance, he was talking about, ESG, the Great Reset, some of these emerging issues as it relates to like artificial intelligence and some of that stuff that kind of related to the past books that Justin and I have worked on with Glenn Beck. But this time it was different. He was talking about how this is the first time coming to this conference where he's actually very hopeful and optimistic. He said that he was in fact more optimistic than he has been since the 90s, which was hilarious because who immediately followed him on stage was Justin, who scared everybody about the European Union and the scheme that they have that threatens to co-opt American businesses. But Glenn's sense of optimism was infectious. It was kind of the vibe of the whole conference. Was just kind of in the afterglow of the 2024 election. But yeah, anyways, the conference was the cause of why we weren't here, why we missed last week's show, which kind of bums me out because last week's topic was one that I was particularly interested in. In fact, Jim and I discussed that topic early last week before I left, that idea that everything has changed. So I want to start off the show talking about...
Before we do that, can I just do one quick thing?
Absolutely.
I just want to tell anyone who has a chance to go to Dallas, this was actually in Irving, go to the American Journey Museum because we spent half a day there and that was incredible. I mean, the history there, the artifacts, it was so cool to hold in your hands, documents from the 1400s, 1500s, 1600s, and just, it was really, really special. That was one of the best museum tours I've ever had in my life.
Yeah, no, it was great. This is the fourth time I've been to this conference. It's always awesome. So Jim, one of these days, I'll smuggle you in. I'll pack you away in one of my bags or something like that. We'll get you in the door. I think they don't let heathens like you in. I know that you're trying to talk, but you're muted. But
yes. I was just mentioning that it's just going to have to be a very big bag, and I think I might be over the weight limit for the baggage handlers. But yeah, thank you. I appreciate it.
We'll stow you away. Don't you worry about that. But yeah, so I missed out on the conversation, the on-air conversation of the idea that everything has changed. So I wanted to dedicate a segment of this episode to that as well, because not only do I want to partake in that conversation a little bit, but I think that we were seeing examples of this like almost on a daily basis. So the first example that I want to talk about is the virality of the Trump dance. This is something that we have been seeing a little bit more and more, which is just fills my heart with joy. It's just like the funniest thing in the world. So over the weekend, there was a big UFC event that was attended by a large Trump delegation, which I think included Elon Musk, Donald Trump Jr. I think was there, or maybe it was JD Vance. I'm not sure. RFK Jr., maybe a few other people. But the main event included Jon Jones, who, after he won the match, well, actually, I think we have a clip. Why don't we just go ahead and play this clip? But this is right as the match is ending, and you'll see exactly what happens as we go ahead and play this.
Still, how good is Johnny Bones? How good?
Big thank you to President Donald Trump for being here tonight.
So for those audio only listeners that are catching the show, that as soon as Jon Jones finished beating up his opponent, they ring the bell. He immediately goes over, sees Trump in the crowd, points to him, and starts doing the Trump dance. And then as the video rolls, he climbs over the fence and he gives Donald Trump the belt, shakes his hand. They talk for a good 45 seconds, maybe an entire minute. It was like, seriously, it's like the most wholesome video. Like, even the context is like UFC and this guy just beat somebody up to the point where he couldn't continue. It's still like the most wholesome video that I can imagine. But Jim, well, you know what? First, before I get your reaction on this, this wasn't the only moment like this. Over the weekend, there was a rash of this exact sort of celebration playing out in a number of NFL games, I think in a golf league, soccer games. Right. So I think there's a little bit of a montage of different Trump dancing things that we can just play. We don't need the audio. You get the idea, but it's a bunch of various athletes doing the Trump dance after they score a touchdown or what have you. But Jim, I mean, did you react in the same way? It just feels like there's an exuberance going on here. There's just like that joy that Kamala Harris and Tim Walz were running their campaign on seems to be completely on the other side of the aisle that they thought it was. What was your reaction to seeing all of these different examples of the Trump dance going viral?
Well, I mean, I think it's like there's been a veil of falsity that's been lifted from everyone's eyes. I mean, this election is, I think, going to go down in history as one of the most significant and important in our lifetimes, and maybe even in American history. The Donald Trump winning the popular vote. Let me just back up just a little bit. One of the things that was happening leading up to this election is that you saw people who in 2016 and 2020 wouldn't have dared to endorse Donald Trump or speak any even a kind word about him, because there was a high social cost to saying that you supported Donald Trump, because that means you were a Nazi, you were a white supremacist, you were for white Christian nationalism, you were for J6 and insurrection, that he's literally Hitler and all these things. But as we got closer to the election in 2024, there were people that you wouldn't expect saying, like, yeah, I support Donald Trump, I'm going to vote for him. You had actors like Zachary Levi, who has a very lucrative career in Hollywood. He played Shazam. He got his start in the show Chuck on NBC. He came out in support of Donald Trump. You have Justine Bateman, although this happened after the election, known as Mallory Keaton in Family Ties. She's completely based now, as they say. She came out and said that she felt like she was so relieved at the election of Donald Trump that she felt like that, she was kind of living in some sort of oppressive, unthinking regime for the last 4 years, and was finally just relieved that she could speak her mind again. And again, there was all of this social permission to support Donald Trump. I think the culmination of that being when he appeared on Joe Rogan's podcast, the most popular podcaster in the world. Literally tens of millions of people watch his podcast every single week. It is not unusual for a popular podcast to get 100 million views over not that long a period of time, including, I would imagine by now, the Donald Trump podcast. And so now what you've seen after the election is all of these people, now that Donald Trump has been elected, expressing their exuberance, as you said, Donnie, that the country has changed, the world has changed, and they are celebrating it by doing Donald Trump's very corny, but actually really kind of cute and heartwarming little dance that he does every time he comes on stage. I mean, I've had YMCA, I hate that song, but I've had the YMCA song in my head for all week because it's just there because people are doing these dances. And so when you see it in the NFL, when you see it at UFC, as we mentioned, there was a female golfer on the LPGA tour who was walking down the right in the middle of a pretty tough match she was having, or tough round she was having. She was trying to win the tournament, and she's walking down the fairway with Nelly Korda, who is probably the most famous and best female golfer in the world. And she starts doing the Trump dance, and then Nelly Korda smiles. And so that's what I mean by, and we had that as our theme last week when me and Linnea and Chris Martz had to do it because you guys were absent. But there was just this feeling that everything has changed, that that the woke era is now over, not just in our politics, and then we're going to see that reflected in public policy under a new Trump administration, but also in our pop culture, in our sports. The leftist agenda and the woke agenda has been injected into literally every aspect of your life. Even the coffee cup you get from Starbucks, where they told you, remember, they told you you wanted to write an anti-racist. They wanted their baristas to write an anti-racist message on the cup to hand to people. I mean, that garbage is over, and people are expressing their absolute joy, frankly, that we can now go back to being America again, instead of being some kind of like mind-controlled socialist utopia that we were, involuntarily shoved in for basically, to be honest, for almost the whole last decade. That's over. It's like, I saw another reference today. It's like the day disco died. Disco is over, woke is over, and now we're going into back to a sense of normalcy that, again, no wonder people are dancing and showing exuberance, because they've been waiting for this for quite a while.
Right. Yeah, right. Chris, you could feel free to comment on just the Trump dance and the general everything has changed. But I also wanted you to talk on behalf of just like the mainstream media, which there's been a handful of stories. I know Jim and Linnea and Chris Martz covered this in last week's episode, but there's been more developments. One of those being something that we briefly talked about just the other day in the office, the idea of Mika and Joe Scarborough going to Mar-a-Lago to kiss the ring and to reset communications with Donald Trump after 8 years of just like trashing him nonstop on their outlet. But so what's your perspective on this? Has everything changed? Do you feel like that there's some seismic shifts going on with the mainstream media? What's your take?
So, we're still only a couple of weeks out from the election, and I still think a lot of the mainstream media pundits are like just dealing with it. I think in the immediate aftermath, a couple of days after, there was a denial. Now from what I see, it's kind of morphed from denial to acceptance, but it's definitely moved into the how can we resist? How can we throw a wrench in the Trump administration as much as possible. But you know what? I agree with Jim. I don't care what the mainstream media thinks. Okay, Donnie, first of all, viewership is down humongous. MSNBC and CNN. Comcast just announced that they are spinning off on MSNBC. I can't help but wonder if because the ratings are so low and advertising dollars are probably drying up. So you know what, the mainstream media, I think one of the things we learned from the 2024 election is that they have lost a lot of the muscle that they once had. What we saw obviously was, podcasts and these alternative forms of media become, I think, more powerful, more influential than the, Mikas and the CNNs of the world. So I think to some degree that there is, probably frustration, anger, whatever, resentment, and I think actually, I don't think I see it. It's definitely happening. Jen Psaki had a show on Monday where she was just, how can people vote for this, all that kind of stuff. But you know what?
I think she's
That doesn't matter.
I think
When I'm going to the grocery store, when we're at the airport or stuff like that, I don't see people freaking out. I'll say that I expected some sort of pushback. I don't know if it would be riots or like that kind of stuff. But I thought, wow, if he wins, that's probably what we're going to see. Guess what? We didn't see any of that. And I think that goes to show that the silent majority, the people who were worried about, vociferously saying, hey, you know what, I support Donald Trump, they are, no longer in fear. And I think that's a great thing. So, in 1920, Warren G. Harding said, we got to return to normal after World War I and all the, progressive era stuff. 104 years later, wow, look, it's happening again. So that to me is great news. Donnie, someone very, very wise told me that there's this thing called a pendulum and that things work on a pendulum. And I think that we are finally swinging back in the right direction, no pun, where freedom and, freedom of choice and just, people having the ability to say what's on their mind, big tech censorship and all that stuff. I think that is, on the way out. And I'm cautiously optimistic that we are in for, a period of rejuvenation. I really think so.
Yeah. That Chris is referencing a wonderful discussion that we had at the conference where I schooled everybody in a debate, and one of my core messages surrounded a pendulum analogy. But we'll move on from that. No rebuttal. No time for rebuttal. We'll have to. We're going to move into our main topic here because we have a lot to talk about when it comes to our main topic, and that is what I'm talking. The Trump's cabinet. This is a dream team. So, in the lead up to the election, Donald Trump surrounded himself with a number of pretty unconventional political characters, including RFK Jr., Elon Musk, Vivek Ramaswamy, many others. And there was a lot of talk that Trump was preemptively constructing his transition team so that they could hit the ground running when it came to the days after the election. And this is exactly what happened. Within a few days of winning the election, Donald Trump started announcing various nominations to various cabinet positions in this incoming administration. So seemingly every day since, there's been at least one additional announcement. So I want to go through a bunch of these picks. Some we'll just kind of group together. Some will go in individually because there's so many. If you scroll through that list, there's like 30 something already. But just off the bat, I think it's safe to say that there are not many people that are unanimously thrilled with all of the picks. I think that depending on kind of where you are on the political spectrum, you're happy with some picks, you're less than thrilled with some other ones. If you're on a different part of the political spectrum, maybe you have those exactly reversed. More mainstream conservatives are upset about certain picks while being happy with others. I've seen some libertarian types that are thrilled about certain ones and disappointed with others. So before we get into the specifics, where do you guys stand? So give me a letter grade. In fact, I want everyone in the chat to give me a letter grade on this as well. So give me a letter grade on how you think Trump is doing so far when it comes to making these picks. Jim, I'm going to ask for yours first, and you don't have to say anyone specific because we'll go through them all, but just give me your letter grade off the top.
A. I mean, I want to give an A+, but there's one or two that I might be like, they could maybe pick somebody better, but absolutely an A. Okay. Look, we need to, we'll get into it, but yeah, absolutely an A. And people complaining, I don't really know what they're complaining about, considering who they're replacing and what the alternatives were. And frankly, what the alternatives were back in the first Trump administration. This is a huge improvement.
Chris, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm going B+, A-.
Okay. All right, sweet deal. I, being the objective moderator of this discussion, will abstain from giving a letter grade and opinions on some of these following things. So we'll just leave it at that. But let's start off with some of the first picks that were made. Now, I'm just going to run through each of these groups. I'm going to run through a couple, focusing on one person in particular. When I throw it to you guys, if you want to comment on some of the people that I breeze over, feel free. But we got to kind of pick and choose if we're going to contain this discussion to an hour. So let's start off with some of the first ones that were made. Susie Wiles was named the White House Chief of Staff. Elise Stefanik was named the UN ambassador. And for border czar, Trump nominated Tom Homan, most famous to me from thrashing AOC in a congressional hearing about the border. And in fact, it was so good, I specifically requested a video be brought up about Homan and AOC. So we have that video ready. Can we please play Homan thrashing AOC, please? Yep, here it is.
Yes, I signed that memo.
So you are the author of the family separation policy?
I am not the author of this memo.
You're not the author, but you signed the memo?
Yes, a zero tolerance memo.
So you provided the official recommendation to Secretary Nielsen on for the United States to pursue family separation?
I gave Secretary Nielsen numerous recommendations on how to secure the border and save lives.
But it says here that you gave her numerous options, but the recommendation was option 3, family separation.
What I'm saying, this is not the only paper where we've given the Secretary numerous options to secure the border and save lives.
And so the recommendation, of the many that you recommended family separation.
I recommended zero tolerance.
Which includes family separation.
The same as is with every U.S. citizen parent gets arrested when they're with a child.
Zero tolerance was interpreted as the policy that separated children from their
If I get arrested for DUI and I have a young child in the car, I'm going to be separated. When I was a police officer in New York and I arrested a father for domestic violence, I separated that father from his
Mr. Holman,
family.
with all due respect, legal asylees are not charged with any crime.
When you're into the country illegally, it's violation 8 United States Code 1325.
Seeking asylum is legal.
If you want to seek asylum, you go through the port of entry, do it the legal way. The Attorney General of the United States has made that clear.
That's
Okay.
right.
Mr. Chair,
I've seen that clip like a dozen times, and it's just not like rhetoric that he's like spouting back at her. He's just throwing like facts and logic in her face, and it's just marvelous to watch. So, Jim, I think I'm going to go to you on this one first. Your thoughts on the border czar? I think the biggest criticisms coming from the left is that this guy wants to do his job too much. What are your thoughts?
Look, we have laws on the books for supposedly discouraging illegal immigration and how to process illegal immigrants. And I think by last count, there were 1.3 million people who entered this country illegally and have actually somehow had their case go through the legal system. And then the legal system said, you are not a legitimate asylum seeker. You are hereby deported. 1.3 million illegal immigrants have a legal judicial order of deportation, and yet they remain in this country, and the current regime has no interest in actually deporting them and following the law. Tom Homan says that when the first thing he's going to do as border czar is direct the immigration, the ICE and the Department of Homeland Security to track down these 1.3 million people who have already had a legal deportation order issued against them and remove them from the country. This country, the idea that we're just not supposed to follow any immigration laws, that we need comprehensive immigration reform before we can do anything. Here we have current law. They have gone through the entire process. They are not supposed to be here. Out you go. Either we have an immigration policy in this country, as Tom Homan said in that hearing, in which he humiliated AOC, family separation. He's like, when I arrest a guy for DUI and he has a kid in the car, guess what? Family separation. He doesn't go to jail, or you don't punish the kid by putting him in jail with the with the father, and same thing for domestic violence and things like that. And so if you want to apply for legitimate political asylum in the United States because you're escaping a country in which your politics or your ethnicity or something, it results in a crackdown by the government on you as a class of people, for instance, you can apply for legal asylum in the United States, as Tom Homan mentioned in that hearing, by going to a legal point of entry and applying for asylum. You do not get to have asylum in the United States when you sneak into this country illegally, and then just claim verbally, I'm applying for asylum. That's not how it works. But when we start with the 1.3 million who have already gotten deportation orders, and then start working our way down by tracking down criminals who should not have never been in this country in the first place, you're going to see a border and an immigration policy that in a large measure will fix itself. People will self-deport rather than be rounded up as they should be. In fact, a lot of those 1.3 million, I bet, are going to leave this country voluntarily before they are seized as being here illegally by the United States government and sent out. There is not a single country in the world in which I could go to and enter it illegally and flout the laws of that country, be it Sweden or Germany or Great Britain or Brazil or Argentina. I can't just walk into those countries and decide to live there if I feel like it. Somehow the United States is supposed to be the only country where that's okay. It's not okay anymore. We're going to have rule of law. We're going to have the way you get comprehensive immigration reform, which is a very good debate to have. Maybe there should be a lot of significant changes to our immigration laws in this country. You have to start by enforcing the laws we have. Donald Trump and Tom Homan are going to do that. And that's an A+++ pick in my book.
Yeah, I mean, Chris, this one's kind of hard to deny, and maybe you do. I don't know, but Trump ran like one of his core messages, securing the border. I mean, could you pick a better guy than this? What do you thought?
Well, he served under Obama, and in 2015, President Obama gave him the Presidential Award, the Rank Award, which is the highest civil service award one can bestow for his integrity in public service. So Tom Homan has been doing this for several years. He is an expert. He knows exactly what he's doing. And just yesterday, we saw the monster who murdered Laken Riley get sentenced to life in prison. That should have never happened. Laken Riley should still be in nursing school. Her family should not be dealing with her death. That is just one of thousands of American families who have been, who have suffered because illegal immigrants are committing crimes and taking, public services and all sorts of stuff. So I have very, very, very little sympathy for the millions of illegal immigrants who have flooded this country in recent years. My mom came from Germany, did it the right way, had to earn her citizenship. That's what you have to do. I am all for immigration. I wouldn't be here if the United States did not accept German immigrants after World War II. So spare me the anti-immigrant stuff. We're a nation of laws. Mr. Homan is going to be great at his job. He's going to get rid of the people who need to go. And I really hope that the wall gets built and finally we have, some common sense border policy. So I'm very excited for this.
Yeah. Tom Homan, good pick. Very interesting to see how this plays out. All right. So moving on, we've got Sean Duffy as Secretary of Transportation. He's got some big shoes to fill after Pete Buttigieg mucked it up for the last 4 years, so we'll see how he does. Michael Waltz as National Security Advisor. And then early on in all of this, Marco Rubio was floated as Secretary of State. This ended up being confirmed to the dismay of at least a few more libertarian-minded friends of mine. I think that many see Rubio as being more on the establishment side of things. So I want to go to Chris first on this one. What do you think about Rubio as Secretary of State?
I like him. He's, descendant of Cuban immigrants who came and fled Castro, and he understands that there are, basically good governments and bad governments. And I think he's going to take a much harder line approach to the quote unquote bad governments, whether it be Iran, China, Russia, or some of these others, and North Korea, obviously. And I'm excited to have him in as Secretary of State. I think that, Tony Blinken just did a horrific job. The Middle East is on fire. Look at what's going on in Europe. I think, Marco Rubio is a no nonsense pick for this. And I think he's going to do a great job.
Jim, I kind of suspect that you will agree with Chris on that point.
Yeah, I mean, from Lil Marco to Secretary of State, only in America. And I think it also points up the fact that, the media and a lot of politicos kind of go nuts every time Donald Trump so-called, quote unquote, insults people, like he did with Little Marco and all that stuff, that it really doesn't actually matter in the larger scheme of things. And people can and will work with Donald Trump because Donald Trump's a winner, and Marco Rubio wants to be with a winner. And he wants to put out a winning foreign policy that is going to be America first. He's going to 100% implement Donald Trump's foreign policy agenda overseas. And he's a much, much better pick than Rex Tillerson, who was his first pick. Again, you should really compare these to who Donald Trump picked for these very important slots in 2016. He came into Washington, D.C. with basically no contacts, I should say. He was not part of the system. So it was pretty spotty in some of his picks, and this is going to be solid all the way up and down the board.
Yeah. So, admittedly, when it comes to like politics and all of that, I've always said I'm more of a policy guy. So admittedly, I'm a little more kind of ignorant on some of the, interworkings of some of these people's brains and all of that. But I'm a little bit of two minds on Marco Rubio. On one hand, I actually was made aware by certain people at this conference that we were just at that Marco Rubio is a good ear to have when it comes to pushing back against like this ESG stuff, and him being in this role might actually go a long way when it comes to pushing back against the European Union ESG. More news to come on that. I'll put that in my pocket for now. But on the other side of things, Jim, you know this. We have a group chat that has a gentleman on it that we probably don't see eye to eye on a lot of things, especially as they relate to Trump. And he was over the moon about the Marco Rubio pick, which gave me a little bit of pause.
Right.
I'll just leave it at that. So, all right, let's move on. So when it comes to national defense, we've got John Ratcliffe as CIA director. We've got Pete Hegseth as defense secretary, and Tulsi Gabbard as director of national intelligence. So, Jim, I'll go to you first on this one. So some on the left are trying to paint Hegseth as being nothing more than a Fox News host. But worse is the people that are trying to label Tulsi Gabbard as being some Russian stooge, some Putin puppet, what have you. So what are your thoughts on this? And also taking into account that Tulsi Gabbard ran as a Democrat not all that long ago. What are your thoughts on this group of picks?
Yeah, well, one of our friends in that group text chat, was like, we win the election and we appoint all these Democrats to these high positions. And I'm like, all right, but come on, this is politics, and you have to reward Tulsi Gabbard with something for basically helping push Donald Trump over the line. There is no doubt in my mind. And as I talked earlier in the podcast about the kind of, you get social permission to support Trump. When Tulsi Gabbard, who was a Democrat until about 20 minutes ago, and RFK Jr., who is still a Democrat, when those people come out and not just state support, they don't just publicly state their support for Donald Trump, but campaign with him repeatedly on big, huge rallies and go on television and advocate for him. That helped get Donald Trump over the line because it helped make other people think, okay, well, if they're for Trump, I can be for Trump. And I can actually say it out loud. And maybe you can even buy a MAGA hat and wear it to the grocery store. These things really matter. But putting all of that aside, and she should be rewarded for that, and that's just the way politics works, I find it absolutely awesome that the new director of national intelligence is Tulsi Gabbard. The intelligence community put Tulsi Gabbard on basically the terrorist no-fly list, or I should say the terrorist extra scrutiny as she goes through the airport for criticizing the Biden administration. It was absolutely 100% an abuse of power, and it's the kind of thing that the American people rejected on election day, these kinds of abuses of power. And so now you're going to have Tulsi Gabbard, and an Army veteran, somebody who has been, she a four-term Congresswoman. She ran for president as a Democrat and basically knocked Kamala Harris out of that 2020
That's right.
primary system by being the first person to actually have the guts to challenge her directly. So I think it's great that she is now in charge of the apparatus that put her on a terrorist no-fly list. And so the first thing she should do, as soon as she's sworn in, walk into her office, have her assistant stand in the doorway and say, I want you to bring me the person who put me on that list. A person did that, and I want the person who did it, and I want him in my office before lunch. And that way, I'm going to turn on my my live webcam, and I'm going to fire that asshole in front of the whole world. And then I'm going to lay down the law, because the abuse of power of our intelligence system is really one of the things that I was worried about, and I think a lot of people voted for this time around. There is nothing more dangerous than a corrupt, politicized intelligence service, as Donald Trump himself witnessed before he even took his first oath of office in January of 2017. Having Tulsi Gabbard, a victim of our politicized intelligence services, now in charge of it, I think is one of the best things that's happened since the election.
Yeah, I like the Tulsi Gabbard pick. She, like you said, like she kind of made a statement by basically just knocking out Kamala Harris in those primaries all those years ago. That was fantastic. But what she also did was expose the left as being like the pro-war side of the aisle, which, if you were to tell people that 10 years ago, you would think that's crazy. But she really showed that. And by her kind of uniting forces with Trump is kind of like giving almost this like blessing that the Trump side is the non-pro-war side of the political aisle. And just to show like how insane like the world is in responding to some of this stuff, there was a clip that I saw from MSNBC, I think just over this past weekend, where it was AOC on MSNBC with Joy Reid talking about Tulsi Gabbard, right? And they said this is real, okay? They said, yep, she was a pro-war pick. This is a pro-war pick by the pro-war Trump administration. This is the narrative that's trying to be spun on MSNBC by AOC and Joy Reid. I kid you not. That's a real clip that you can find. But Chris, thoughts on this batch of picks? What do you think?
Yeah, I want to include one more. Doug Collins was named as the Secretary of Veteran Affairs, and that is a job that needs a lot of work. Unfortunately, we have treated our veterans like garbage, and that is just, that is a sin. So he's going to go in there, and I hope he really puts back into place some of those free to choose type policies where they don't have to go through the VA, because the VA is a joke, and they can just go seek healthcare in the private sector, which I think is going to be great. So I'm very passionate about that. Tulsi Gabbard, I'm also very passionate about, because one of the things that really scares me is that our intelligence agencies have been spying on Americans. And that was never supposed to be that way. We started to learn about this from Edward Snowden in the wake of 9/11. And I think she's going to go in there and clean house and make sure that that never happens again. I want to talk about Pete Hegseth. Pete Hegseth was a Fox News weekend co-host. Pete Hegseth has also served in Iraq and Afghanistan and received 2 bronze medals for valor. Pete Hegseth understands the military inside and out. He's written, books about it. He talks about it extensively. He understands the problems in our military, the DEI and the lack of merit. The left is going insane because he's saying common sense things like maybe we shouldn't have women fighting on the front lines in combat, because if a guy gets shot, what if she can't carry him, to safety? That is what the military is supposed to be about. It's supposed to be about making sure that we are the most lethal fighting force on planet Earth, bar none. Who cares about the DEI stuff? Who cares about all that woke stuff? Get it out of the military. I'm not saying that I'm pro military by any means, but I do believe strongly in peace through strength. I want to have a military that's top notch, ready to go at a moment's notice so that we don't have to use it. Mm-hmm. And I think that Pete Hegseth is the guy to get that job done. And also, I just want to say one quick thing. Let's not forget that the current defense secretary basically went AWOL and had a procedure done a couple of years ago, did not even tell the president about this. That is just unacceptable. We have to, and the fact that there's been no accountability for him, for any of these other cabinet officials. One of the things that is interesting about the Biden administration, there's been almost no turnover in cabinet officials. Why is that? because there's no accountability. So you do want to have turnover among cabinet officials, especially if they're not doing a good job. And most of Biden's cabinet picks have done a terrible job, and here they are, past 3.5 years later, still in that job. That is not the way it's supposed to be. So, I'm very, very, glad that Trump is putting these, these people in place to make sure that they're going to clean up the intelligence agencies and the military. And John Radcliffe, I think, is an awesome pick for CIA. He was the former DI, and he did a great job there. And I think he's going to do even better cleaning up CIA.
Fantastic. So, Jim, I want to go to you specifically on this one. A group of kind of the energy and climate picks, people that'll kind of have an impact on those areas. So we got Doug Burgum as Interior Secretary. We have Chris Wright as the Secretary of Energy, and Lee Zeldin as EPA Administrator. So, Jim, I know you're in all sorts of these conversations about these topics with a bunch of different people that are in the kind of the climate realist, pro-energy groups, all of that sort of stuff. So what's the vibe out there of these climate and energy people when it comes to these Trump picks?
Well, there was worry that Doug Burgum, again, this is politics, so you reward the people that supported you and that deserve, frankly, in the political terms, deserve a job. Doug Burgum was one of the first people of prominence he was in the primary system, and he dropped out, and he endorsed Trump without any hesitation. And so, Donald Trump, like a lot of politicians, reward loyalty. And so, Doug Burgum, if I'm elected, you're going to have a place in my administration somewhere. We'll find out. The fear among climate realists was that Doug Burgum would be named the head of the Department of Energy, because he dedicated, which is it, South Dakota or North Dakota? He dedicated his state to achieving net zero by 2035 or 2050 or whatever, which is insane. It's stupid. It's unachievable, and it's anti-energy freedom. It's anti-American, to be honest.
It's anti-reality.
Yeah, it's anti-reality. Yeah, exactly. It's not achievable. But it's especially egregious coming out of a state that has made a fortune for the people of that state through fracking. And so, him dedicating himself to net zero was a big turnoff, I could say. So, these friends of mine are not super thrilled that he's in the administration. He can do very little damage in interior. The idea that he's going to continue the kind of policies that the Biden administration has implemented, keeping federal lands fracking free, and that you can't explore for minerals and oil and gas in those places, that's not going to happen. Donald Trump's not going to let that happen. So that's fine. And as far as the selections of guys like Lee Zeldin for EPA, fantastic. You can always judge. Your initial judgment of these things is how apoplectic the environmental left goes whenever these names pop up. And so they went crazy with rending their clothing into pieces and wailing into the sky with Lee Zeldin's pick for EPA. And for energy, which is fantastic, is we basically have, without a doubt, the most pro-American energy production Secretary of Energy ever. And I don't think it'll end up being close. So these are, if you're a climate realist, if you're somebody who believes in an America First energy policy, the Heartland Institute actually hosted 2 America First energy policy conferences back during the early years of Trump's first administration, and we may have to kick that around and do that once again. But yeah, these are fantastic picks, and such an improvement, obviously, over what we're experiencing now and have for the last 4 years under Biden and Harris.
All right, let's move on to some of the more.
Can I just say one quick thing about Chris Wright? This is important, I think.
He has a good first name. I got it. Go ahead.
Obviously. So under the Biden administration, we have banned exporting liquefied natural gas to our European allies, which is one of the main reasons why the Russian war machine is able to fund itself, because they are selling tons and tons of natural gas to continental Europe, Germany especially. So by reopening export terminals and getting the fossil fuel industry, up and running and going full blast, I think that we are going to vastly undermine Russia's ability to maintain their war against Ukraine. And that is a great thing.
Yeah, and just one thing to add to that. Who is that? Who's the head of the European Parliament? Is it Ursula something? Some Danish lady?
Von Laren or whatever.
Yeah, right. So I think 2 days after Trump's election, she said, we need to stop getting natural gas from Russia and start getting it from the United States. It'd be great if you would just get your liquefied natural gas over this way. We'd be happy to buy it. So, the election had worldwide positive consequences before he's even elected it or inaugurated it office again. It's great.
Right. Yeah, that was go ahead.
I was going to say one more thing real quick. We should never underestimate the amount of influence that energy policy has within the economy in general and for inflation in particular. And, we just did a report that showed that average Americans' energy bills have gone up thousands of dollars over the past couple of years. I mean, I'm suffering. I see my bill skyrocketing. So not only is it, at the gas, at the pump that we're paying these extra costs, but to heat our homes, to, air condition our homes and in businesses and all this stuff that is being passed on to the consumer. So just by saying, hey, we're going to, start, really unleashing American energy production, we're going to see a substantial decline in inflation within the first couple of years of Trump's presidency.
Yeah, that was always his answer for how he's going to bring prices down. It's like, first you got to start with energy, which is perfect. That resonates with me because I've said a million times, this is stolen from other energy experts.
Still got to cut that government spending, but
energy is a master resource. But yes, speaking of cutting spending, let's talk a little bit about the Department of Government Efficiency. So now this isn't an official government position or department or anything like that, right, Chris? And this has been
which is even better, actually, I think.
Okay, well, tell me all about it because I really don't know much. I should brush up on this. All I know is that Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy have been put as the leads of this Department of Government Efficiency. Tell me about it, Chris. What do we have to expect?
Right. So it's an outside of government organization that's going to come in and inject, some much needed reforms into the bureaucracy. I was watching a interview with Vivek yesterday, and he said what they're going to do is they're going to do podcasts, almost like the FDR's fireside chats, where they actually talk to the people and say, we're cutting this because of this. We're reforming this because of this. So this is not going to be done behind closed doors, in the deep recesses of the Capitol. This is going to be done as openly and transparently as one can possibly imagine. And another thing that they're going to do, and this is, I think, another really important aspect of the Department of Government Efficiency's agenda, is they're going to inject technology. So, the IRS does not even you can't send them emails. Okay, their automated, that is a fact. Their automated telephone system is, from the 1970s. It's a joke. One of the things that they're saying is, why don't we create an app where people can actually do their taxes? So stuff like that is
great.
Yeah, and it would, it would have such severe ramifications for the bureaucracy. I mean, the IRS has tens and tens and tens of thousands of people who work there, and all they really do is just push papers back and forth. So there's that aspect of it. Another thing that they want to do is they want to use AI in the federal contracting process. So instead of this being a wink, wink, nod, nod, I'm going to give you that contract, and then 2 years later, you're going to hire me to be a lobbyist, it would just use AI to go instantly to the most efficient, contract possible. So just things like that just are a welcome news for me. Another thing that they're going to do, the Office of Management and Budget, that is a very important, agency, because that is the agency that oversees the actual line items of the federal budget. So I remember being so excited when Trump first came to office in 2016, and the OMB director was like, okay, we're going to go in there, we're going to start cutting stuff, but nothing ever happened. So one of the things that Ramaswamy and Musk are going to do is that they're going to pepper that entire agency with people who are dedicated to cutting staff and cutting regulations. So this is a all of government approach to say, what can we go in, what can we make more efficient, and what can we inject some technology into, and what can we just do away with? There is so much waste, fraud, and abuse within the federal government. So for them to go in there and cut $2 trillion, I saw some Democrat senators on CNN last night just, tearing their hair out saying, oh, this is going to, the country is going to collapse. We won't even have, social services. That is just not true. That is not true one bit. There is a lot of bloat. There's a lot of waste and fraud and abuse that can be cut out. And that will make our lives better. It will make, businesses better able to function. And you know what? The best part about it is we'll probably have more money in our pockets at the end of the day, because there won't be this insatiable need for this just ever-growing tax revenue to fund our $6 trillion federal budget. And by the way, just a couple of weeks ago, we went over the $36 trillion mark in our national debt. We got to start paying that down. We got to start reducing these interest payments. The interest on our debt is now the third highest line item in our budget behind Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security. It is higher than our entire Defense Department budget. So we have to get this under control. They're calling this a once in a lifetime opportunity, and they are basically calling this the Manhattan Project of our time. I am so on board with this, and I cannot wait to see the results.
Yeah, that's got to be the most exciting thing, especially when they tapped Ron Paul to be like an advisor to this. That just made my heart overflow with joy. Jim, let's talk about Robert F. Kennedy Jr. as head of the Department of Health and Human Services. So when RFK Jr. joined the Trump train, it was exclusively under the banner of "Let's make America healthy again." So what a better place to put him than as head of the HHS. In fact, I remember when RFK Jr. kind of announced that he was going to be helping out Donald Trump. He had this great announcement speech talking about, why he's prioritizing health and all of these different things. But again, this is one of those picks that if you go on Twitter and just look through your, conservative feed or whatever, you're going to see people objecting to this one. What are your thoughts on RFK Jr.?
Well, I think Trump's pick of RFK Jr. is actually proof, first of all, that Donald Trump is not some kind of radical right-wing person, and that the MAGA movement is not some kind of radical right-wing fascist movement. It's in fact very centrist and commonsensical. I mean, again, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is not going to deregister himself as a Democrat. And he comes from, like it or not, Democratic royalty in this country. And it is extremely significant that he abandoned his independent campaign. The Democrats only have themselves to blame for this, by the way, because Robert F. Kennedy wanted to primary Joe Biden, and they refused to let that happen. So he had to run as an independent. And then when he was done running as an independent, he asked the Democrats if they would like, his support. And my understanding is that they told him to get lost. We don't like your ideas. And then he goes to Donald Trump. He goes, actually, your ideas, maybe they're a little out there. Maybe they're a little outside the mainstream, but that's okay. Let's talk. Let's talk. If you want to support me, let's talk about what you may be able to do in a future administration if we win. And here we are. Now, people may think that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is weird. All right. Is he as weird as a man in a dress and a wig, being put in and called an admiral, being put in charge of a very high position in health and human services under the Biden administration? Yeah, I'll go out on a limb here and say RFK Jr. is not as weird as that. And what is what needs to happen in almost everyone, actually all of them, not almost every single one of these departments, is that they need to be, for lack of a better way to put it, torn apart and rebuilt. Now, is RFK Jr. going to do that? I hope so. Would a traditional, conventional pick for this position, like say even somebody like Dr. Ben Carson, who a lot of people on the right admire, would he be capable and willing to really tear apart that entire bureaucracy and reorient their entire purpose? No, I don't think so. But RFK Jr. can and will do that. Now they call him a vaccine denier and all of that stuff. No, he's actually not. If you listen to him, and I actually recommend everybody watch the RFK Jr. interview with Joe Rogan, where they talked for 3 hours to really have a long time to explain where he's coming from on these things. But this is the same. He is going to be heading up the same establishment that lied to us about everything significant about the pandemic since it began in late 2019. Every single important fact about that pandemic coming from the government was a lie. If there's one thing you may say about Robert F. Kennedy Jr., I don't think he's going to be making the purpose of HHS to purposely lie to the American people as a matter of policy. So for that reason alone, I don't agree with a lot of his ideas. That's fine. His job is to go in there and to reestablish Health and Human Services, to actually be interested in promoting public health, not promoting big pharma, not promoting, basically that's it. I mean, our government is basically in cahoots with big pharma to make us all get vaccines that we may or may not need. And in the case of the pandemic, vaccines that were not actually vaccines and didn't do anything that as they were advertised. So to me, I'll take the good with the bad. I think the bad is going to be very small, if any, and I think there's going to be a lot of good coming out of this.
Donnie, I got to go one step further.
Okay.
So RFK Jr. is hitting on a topic that is very dear to my heart, and that is the obesity and diabetes epidemic among children in this country. Now, I'm not blaming, big food for all of those problems. I think that there's also a big part of that is, parents not, doing what they should be doing. But we are literally, in an epidemic of, childhood obesity and diabetes. We have to address that. We have to stop looking at these big pharma companies as the solution to all this stuff, because I don't want an entire generation of Americans to be on, diabetes medication for their entire lives when they should not even have diabetes at this point in their lives anyways. Type 2 diabetes should not even be happening in kids, yet it's happening all the time now. So yeah, America is extremely unhealthy. I think a lot of it is diet related. I also think that, a lot of it is a lack of exercise. And I think back to President John F. Kennedy, who actually initiated the presidential physical fitness program. Back when I was in school, that was a thing. And we used to go and we used to try to actually achieve that because it meant something. So I'm just glad that someone's in charge who is not a, toady of big pharma, like, so many of these other HHS secretaries have been, and who actually seems to care about the health and wellness of the American people.
Yeah, I'm excited for it. I mean, I saw one headline. It could have been the Babylon Bee, but it was like, fattest and most unhealthy country worried about doing something different with their healthcare or something like that. But anyways, I thought we would spend a pretty good amount of time talking about Matt Gaetz and the pick as AG, but literally 15 minutes before we hit go on this podcast, we got word that he is dropping out of being, consideration for that position. So we'll skip that one. Kind of happy that we can skip that one, but,
you don't want to say anything at all about it? I mean,
well, no. I'm going to wrap up this segment by giving each of you one more opportunity to talk on this. We're already at an hour, and we got one more topic that we have to get to.
Right, I know.
But so Jim, I'll go to you first.
Yeah,
you can comment. You can comment on on this pick if you want, but also if there are any noteworthy picks that I skipped over. And if there's any positions that have yet to been filled that you're excited about and are keeping an eye out for. So feel free to cover all of those. Go ahead.
As Kamala Harris said on The View, nothing comes to mind on that last bit.
Okay.
But I will just say about Matt Gaetz on that text group chat that you and me and some people that maybe don't agree with us on everything we're on. I did float the idea that Matt Gaetz was it was an outrageous pick. It's like, how could you pick this guy? And people sometimes fail to understand that Donald Trump does things for strategic negotiating purposes. He's a negotiator. He wrote The Art of the Deal. That's what he's all about. And so I floated the idea that maybe Matt Gaetz is actually a head fake. It's a negotiating tactic. You put Matt Gaetz out there who has all sorts of problems, who a lot of senators. I mean, his nomination was out there for, I think, 30 minutes before at least 3 Republican senators said, I don't think so. I'm not going to support this guy. And this way, now that he is Matt Gaetz is withdrawn. I even said this in the text thread. I said he'll be out there for about a week, and then he will make an announcement that I don't want to be a distraction to Donald Trump and his agenda. So I'm going to withdraw my name. And Donald Trump was kind enough to allow me to do that. Good luck next time. So this time, Donald Trump can appoint somebody like, I don't know, this was actually suggested in our text thread, Senator Mike Lee out of Utah. There's a guy named Mike Davis, who is a huge Donald Trump defender on media that's been there for a long time. He's got the qualifications. He was a Supreme Court clerk for Gorsuch. He's on the Senate Judiciary Committee staff, the head of the staff on there. And so now Donald Trump can get somebody in there. And what's important here is that you find somebody who, talk about a department that needs to be torn apart and rebuilt. The Department of Justice is the number one department on that agenda list. This is a department that has been weaponized against normal Americans by a radical leftist government for the last 4 years, frankly, for the last 8 years, because that department was weaponized against the president himself. The Department of Justice needs to be reformed from top to bottom. And now that the Gates controversy is over, he could put somebody else in there who would be just as strong at doing that, maybe even more competent at doing that. And it's going to be a lot harder for the Senate to say no.
Great. Chris, I'm very eager to get to this last topic, but so if you could be very brief, if there's any people that I glossed over or any positions that are remain to be seen, any thoughts on this?
Yeah, just one Treasury Secretary. It's going to be big.
Okay. Do we not have somebody for that yet?
Well, we have not had a formal, nomination yet. There was talk it was be Scott Bessent. There's a couple others who are now, coming to the forefront. Interestingly, Elon Musk came out and said he does not want Scott Bessent. So I don't know. I mean, we'll see. But Treasury is that is a department that we really, really, really need to get someone in there who knows what they're doing to get the economy revving up again.
All right, one last thing before we move on to this last topic. So that thumbnail that's right there is my pride and joy. I think that's the best thumbnail that I've made for one of these podcasts. So if anybody, maybe we'll turn it into a poster. If anyone wants to buy one of these so they can put it up in their man cave or something like that, just reach out. Maybe we could probably work that
be
out.
arranged.
That's some beautiful artwork right there. But all right, let's move on. Let's move on to our final topic here. And that is, of course, Thanksgiving is coming. Everybody ready for Thanksgiving? I want to hear from the chat. In fact, let me switch over to see the chat live here. I want to hear from the chat on a scale of 1 to 10. How contentious do you expect your Thanksgiving to be for your family? So 1 being nice and peaceful, love and joy. 10 being your friends and family are going to be at each other's throats. Okay, so if you say 10, that suggests a high likelihood that somebody is going to be leaving Thanksgiving with a black eye along with their leftovers. So I'm very curious. I want to see some numbers in the chat. How contentious is your Thanksgiving going to be, 1 to 10? And I ask this for obvious reasons, but not least of which is my own personal story that I'm going to leave out all the names and the titles of the story, but rest assured, the story is 100% true. My wife and I are going to a big family Thanksgiving, and I think last week, maybe the week prior to that, we were called and warned that another family member and their immediate family would not be going to Thanksgiving if he could not be reassured that there would be no talk of Trump or politics at the gathering. And that he said that if there were talk, that he would take his family and leave. So the host of our Thanksgiving had to call, after being told all of this, had to call everyone up that was going to attend Thanksgiving and basically have them all promise them to abide by this ultimatum outlined by this particular family member. And also, during this discussions, I was singled out as the most likely to bring up "thou who shall not be named," which, if you know me personally, is absurd. I am the last person to bring up politics, in situations like this. It's very out of my character, so don't know why my name was brought up. But yeah, so this is the situation that we find ourselves in, that I personally find myself in. And we're not the only ones having this conversation. If you were to look up, if you just go to Google and look up Thanksgiving dinner Trump, if you Google that, you'll find a bunch of articles talking about this issue. Some have good titles suggesting that families can set aside political differences and have a good holiday with others. But then there's other articles that have ridiculous headlines, like this one from the Huffington Post titled My husband and his family voted for Trump, so I'm canceling Thanksgiving and Christmas. This is not satire. I have it in the show notes. Andy, if you could pull this up as proof that I'm not making this up, that would be fantastic. But I'm going to read a little bit from this article to kind of show the other side of this whole thing. I knew he voted red. He knew I voted blue. I had hoped the most capable and most inclusive candidate would win. He hoped his idea of a better America would win. He won. And from where I stand, America lost. In the aftermath of Tuesday night's results, still under the bed covers Wednesday morning, I scrolled social media looking for hope. I unfriended a few short-sighted Facebook friends. No need to continue our digital relationship and witness their selfishness and hate. Then I saw my husband's post. God bless America. God bless number 45,47. It had a few likes and a few commenters joined in his celebration. He was downstairs in the kitchen making coffee, and I was upstairs avoiding him. I couldn't talk to him or even look at him. I immediately texted, quote, I love you, but out of respect for me and all of my liberal writer friends, can you please take down that post? Also, tell your family I love them, but I will not be coming to Thanksgiving, and I won't be hosting Christmas. I need space. So the article continues to ramble about her feelings and the feelings about others saddened by the events of Election Day.
No. Wait. It's after she's gone crazy. What does he do? He brings her a cup of coffee in bed. He's being so kind and nice, and she has lost it, even in losing it. So that's just so typical. Anyway.
Yeah, and she says that she left the coffee to grow cold. One, because she didn't have an appetite for it, but two, out of spite.
The drama.
But yes, so the article goes on, and there's no good resolution towards the end of it. This isn't a head fake article that ends with her realizing the meaning of the holidays and how they transcend the politics of the day. Nope. The article ends with her telling her husband, I saw you didn't take down that post, and it breaks my heart, before describing how she walked out the door. So that's the article. That's what posted on Huffington Post. And there's other articles like this that, quoting supposed experts giving advice on how you can shun your family if they disagree with you on politics and they like Trump and all of that sort of thing. So I just wanted to briefly kind of talk about how you should go about carrying yourself in potentially contentious holiday after this historic election, because I think that this idea of severing communication with family is horribly backward to me. In fact, I think it's childish. If you don't like you should try to understand where the other people are coming from. Like, grow up and realize that other people have different feelings and opinions about stuff. And I don't mean that to disregard, your feelings, but they have to realize that other people have feelings too. So I think that that conversations that are going to be had around the Thanksgiving table and just around the holidays in general, they do have to be had with a lot of compassion, as much compassion as possible. Avoid accusations of people being brainwashed. Reduce the emotion as much as possible. Just come from a very logical and principled position when it comes to these issues and why you voted in the way that you did. And also, I think this is the most important thing. Be humble. Okay, if you're listening to this podcast, it's more than likely that you were on the winning side, and convincing your aunt or your nephew that they're wrong isn't going to change whether or not Donald Trump takes office in January. Okay, so be humble. Doesn't matter if they end the holidays agreeing with you or not. The best you
forget it, Donnie. You're out of your element.
Was that you, Jim? The best you can do is calmly explain your positions on these matters, be sympathetic to the concerns of your loved ones, and reassure them that the worst aspects they fear that could result from a Trump presidency will likely not materialize. But Jim, what's your holidays looking like? Are you expecting to have any arguments, disagreements, anything like that?
No, it's going to be a quiet Thanksgiving at my house. And by the way, I do owe you my a rundown of my technique for cooking turkey, because it's results in the greatest turkey anyone has ever eaten everywhere I've done it. But speaking of that, years ago I did that. I traveled to family, and I volunteered. I'm going to do the cooking. I'm going to cook the turkey, and it's going to be fantastic. And of course, people loved it. It was very well done. But I heard nothing but leftist talk and anti-Trump talk and insulting stuff all the time. I kept my mouth shut. So I guess not what Thanksgiving's about. Thanksgiving's about being together. And so if they wanted to sit there and run Trump down and, call me an idiot for supporting him and all that stuff, I'm like, all right, that's fine. I'm not going to let you people ruin my Thanksgiving. So of course I still remembered it, and I still remember it, and I remember it sadly. And this woman, look, family is important. Family is very important. And you also only get one life. You have one of them, and you should not throw family time away and memories away over politics. You never should. And it seems that it's always coming from one side. The left cannot help themselves but throwing their politics against anybody who supports Trump or anybody on the right. And they think it's just fine to talk about their politics all the time. Long the live long day. They'll talk about their politics and their woke stuff, and you're supposed to sit there and take it. And if you're a good-hearted conservative, you will take it, because spending time with your family, even those who disagree with you, is more important than engaging necessarily vigorously in such a political discussion. And then here we have, again, typical, the left loses, Trump wins, and this woman cancels Thanksgiving and Christmas because she just can't handle it. Well, I got news for this lady. Thanksgiving and Christmas are not canceled. Right. They're canceled for you, but your family is still going to go on and have Thanksgiving and Christmas. And I hope for her sake and for her family's sake and her poor suffering husband's sake, who brings her a cup of coffee and she leaves it there and gives him no thanks for it, apparently. But I hope for her sake that she comes to her senses and realizes that there's a lot more in life. There's a lot more important than politics, even with Donald Trump as president.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I remember 4 years ago going to Thanksgiving. Never would I dream in a million years of trying to dictate what people were going to say, once I arrived to the scene. So, of course, there were certain people that use their time to express what they're thankful for, to be thankful that Joe Biden won and Donald Trump lost. And what did I do? Did I take my family and storm out? No, I rolled my eyes and went on with my life, because what people realize usually when it's too late is that life is short. You don't have all this time in the world. The amount of times that you're going to have, family gatherings with all of your loved ones or whatever are a lot fewer than you probably expect them to be. So, like I said, be humble, be grateful, and enjoy that time with your family. I see that in the comments when I was asking about how contentious you're expecting your Thanksgiving to be. I saw lots of zeros and ones and a couple of twos. I only saw one. I think it was from Bob Johnson. Maybe yes. 9.
I want to go.
So you're probably in the same boat as me. Hopefully it's not as bad as you're expecting it to be, but I am happy that I'm seeing a lot of zeros and ones in there, because like I said, Thanksgiving is not the time for that. Thanksgiving is a time for enjoying family and just that togetherness and all of that. Chris, final thoughts on all of this. Where are you celebrating Thanksgiving?
Yeah, my mom always hosts Thanksgiving, and actually talked to her this morning, and it's going to be just the immediate family, I believe, this year. Her sisters are traveling, and some of our cousins and nieces are also traveling. But just I one little just personal anecdote here. So I have a large family. I have 4 brothers and sisters, and let's just say that some of them do not agree with me on many of the political, social issues. However, one in particular, over the past year, something happened. She had a baby, and guess what? All that has just completely evaporated. And that to me is really good, and I'm very glad. And we've kind of reconnected, and I'm very thankful for that. So that's great. What? Maybe in my younger years, I would I would be obnoxious and maybe say something that was out of line. But this year, it's definitely not going to happen, because like you guys just said, as you get older, you start to realize family matters a lot. These holidays, fly by, and I want to treasure them, and I do not want to bring politics or any of that stuff into this. So yeah,
that's right. Yep. So I'm either gonna abide by my own advice, or I'm gonna wear my MAGA hat over there and kick down the front door and just spew everything that I want to say. No, I'm just kidding. All right. That's gonna do it for this episode. Thank you all for joining us for this episode of the In the Tank podcast. You join us every week for a new episode, except for next week, because that is Thanksgiving, and I don't think that we're gonna sit down and do a show. So every other week, other than next week, is a new episode of the show. Please subscribe, write a review for us on iTunes, especially if you're an audio-only listener. If you want to watch the show live on Thursdays at noon Central Time, you can. It is live streaming on Facebook and YouTube and Rumble and X. You can join the conversation. Throw your comments and questions in the chat. Maybe we'll show your comments on the screen. Maybe we'll address your questions on the fly. We have been demonetized by YouTube, so you can't use super chats to support the show, but you can still go to heartland.org/inthetank. Donate directly to the show. That helps us out when it comes to production costs. And YouTube doesn't get to take a 30% cut. You could also support the show by hitting that like button, sharing this content, subscribing if you haven't already, or just leaving a comment under the video. All those things help break through those big tech algorithms and prevent content like this from being shown to more people. If you'd like, you can follow us on Twitter at InTheTankPod and send your comments, suggestions, and questions to the show by emailing us at inthetankpodcast@gmail.com. Jim Lakely, where can the fine people find you?
People can just find me by searching for me on X. But I just want to say to all of our viewers and listeners, have a very happy Thanksgiving and bring some friends to the show live next time. We like a very, very exciting chat. So we need more people.
That's right. Chris Talgo, what do you have to pitch today?
Well, Donnie, I'm in your office and I do not see a copy of Propaganda Wars. So if I had one, I would hold it up. But seriously, please, guys, for Christmas and Hanukkah and Kwanzaa and whatever it is you celebrate, buy that book. I read it. It is phenomenal.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for that one, Chris. But that's going to do it for this week. Thank you all for joining us, and we will talk to you 2 weeks from now. Bye.
I think she's an idiot.
He's a lying, dog-faced pony soldier.